would you say that, we talked about the super supplements a little bit. Is that kind of ubiquitous across all professional strongmen there, or is it just more and more at the high levels or higher weights, I should say?
Ooh, I got to speak carefully because there's how I talk to the people that are in the field. And there's how I talk to everybody out there. So I got to like choose my words carefully because my inclination is to just say it's everywhere and kind of leave it at that. But that's not entirely true. At the upper levels, it absolutely is ubiquitous. I would even say at the lower levels in strongman, it's ubiquitous in the sense that so many people do it, but not in the sense that it's 100% or that it's even mandatory to do. Yeah, you're not going to become a high level strongman without it. And if you are, it's because you're competing in a field of guys who are enhanced and their genetics are 1 in 1,000, and you happen to have genetics that are 1 in 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can compete at that level, it's because you were born 6'8". You can hold 400 pounds with relative ease, and you had the childhood and environmental development that was conducive to being really good at that without needing that. That's extraordinarily rare. So yeah, at the top level, you're not going to see that at all whatsoever. But once you get down into the amateur ranks, and I would say even because they're newer, the weight classes as you kind of trickle down, there's more pockets of people that aren't on anything, but it's almost like so many people are that it's not really worth talking about. And
Yeah.
it's shocking too, because it's not just like, well, the guys, first through 10 are on and then everybody else is off. There's a lot of really crappy athletes out there that are on just an insane amount of drugs.
Really?
And that's why the discussion is important to have, because how you frame expectations versus what people should be willing to do. It's such a complicated discussion, but there's a lot of people that get in. They're like, I love strongman. I want to be the world's strongest man. And they have a 200-pound deadlift. The next thing you know, it's been 5 years. They've gone through thousands of dollars worth of test and trend, and they're no better for it. So
Jeez.
stacking priorities is really important. Understanding what you could potentially do given your set of tools is really important. It's a big discussion.
Yeah, I would almost wonder if it's got to be a higher, I mean, maybe not compared to, let's say, top Mr. Olympia bodybuilders, but just on average more than bodybuilding. Because with strongman and powerlifting, I mean, but really, I feel like even more strongman, it's like the heaviest guys in the world, like the biggest, strongest people out there. And whereas, like with bodybuilding, I mean, I can think of a number of even professional bodybuilders who they're on either low doses or the natural, but there's so much to be said for the shape of the muscle bellies, the insertions, the aesthetics, the posing, that you could be 185 pounds and just look super freaky. Whereas with strongman, it's just like your actual strength there, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and it can go a couple of ways with body. I have a really good friend who's the best man at my wedding. Shout out to Russ, who's he's a bodybuilder. He lives and breathes bodybuilding, and I went to one of his shows. And on the one hand, you're right, because some of the things that are required to be a good bodybuilder have little to nothing to do with the drugs. So when you're talking about the shape and basically you have to be a muscle protein synthesizing machine regardless of the gear use. The gear doesn't take somebody who can't grow a full muscle belly and suddenly have them look like Mike O'Hearn. But it does obviously enhance whatever you have. So there are I think things that are required and you could do potentially pretty well, especially at the lower and mid-tier levels. There's rumors of guys like Kai Green and Ronnie Coleman. When you see their pictures where they were supposedly natural,
Right.
kind of believable when you count the size discrepancy
Sure.
at that point in their career where they were freaks to later on where it's like, holy shit, where did that come from?
Right.
It's like Ronnie Coleman was what, 215, and he
That's what
looked
they say. Yeah.
better than anybody else. And then he's 285 on stage so many years later. And it's like, okay, that gives you some insight. But and again, those guys are 1 in 1,000,000. On the other hand, and this is some of the insight I got from my buddy, when you're trying to compete nowadays on any serious level, the things like striations and graininess and being adequately dehydrated while also looking full are no longer optional. There isn't a package you can bring that doesn't feature that isn't going to that isn't going to hurt you in the long run. And that's only really gotten with a big mix of diuretics and a lot of other shit on top of it. And that's ultimately why so many people are dying in that field. But I understand your point as far as the different dynamics of bodybuilding.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, no question. At the high levels of bodybuilding, it's extremely rampant. And you also have other things that strongmen would never take, right? I mean, I don't know, but I would guess strongmen are not as focused on maybe insulin. Well, I guess they still would be because you're trying to shut up, but probably not SEO. You probably don't have site enhancement in strongman and things like that. Obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, probably not diuretics other than maybe to weigh in. I would assume those things are not as rampant.
No, yeah, yeah. And the diuretics aren't when they are used, they're not abused as much because it's temporary. It's literally just to get your body weight. It's not to get a certain look. And they don't get it's still a bad idea if you're cutting weight. If you can't cut, if you're a middleweight competitor and you can't cut 20, 25 pounds on your own, then there's a problem with your protocol. Diuretics are super easy, but it can go sideways so fast. It's like, why? As far as the other stuff, I know some people who have abused insulin.
Hmm.
So guys, it's unfortunate. It attracts a lot of personality types, and I think every
Yeah.
sport does at the upper echelon, where it's the monsters. It's the people that will do everything and they want everything, and they make an agreement with themselves right at the start where it's going to be all gas, no brakes. And I'm actually pretty surprised that you don't hear more about health issues from that side of things, because I know some idiots out there.
Yeah, you definitely hear it a lot, especially in the last few years with bodybuilding. But I don't, maybe it's just because it's not as popular. But I don't hear about it so much in like powerlifting and strongman. But yeah, it's funny. Like you get like some people where I think most men like when they watch like some of these like strongman stuff, or like I really like watching MMA. You see that and you're like, oh, that's really cool, and like I would want to do that. And you realize that the people who take it to that level, like there's something mentally that's just different, right? And I think there was like a story with Mike Tyson and his son wanted to be a boxer, and then he just like laughed in his face. He's like, "Man, you go to private school, like you're not going to be a boxer."
I love hearing how the guys we knew growing up that were hard, that came from rough backgrounds, like athletes that came from rough areas, rappers that came from absolutely nothing and made their name. You have like guys like Snoop Dogg will make a joke about how his kids are spoiled. It's like I came from here, you came from here. And it's funny because getting into these niches, anybody can fight, anybody can lift weights or exercise, but there is that disconnect from seeing the nth degree, seeing the most extreme, the hardest, the baddest, the most out there, and thinking that because that's something you would like to do, well, obviously I just got to go down to the store and pick up a badass card, and then I just got to go over here and I got to get my outfit, and then I got to go over here
Right.
and sign up for a meet, and then before you know it, like I'm going to be world's strongest man in no time. There is, and it's a problem I think with social media that's getting worse. There's a big disconnect where people think that it is that easy, or at least that it should be that easy. That I guess not really being around, seeing it from afar lets you draw these bad conclusions about what it takes to get there.